It started with a sticky note. Yellow, curling at the edges, stuck to the microwave door like it was just another harmless reminder. But it wasn't harmless. Not even close. It read, Teodio today, trash out, pick up dry cleaning, unclog shower, pay electric bill. Dinner at 7. Please be presentable. No please. No thanks. No heart. No emotion. No trace that the person who wrote it had ever loved the man reading it. I stood there for maybe 5 full minutes, staring at that little square of paper. My eggs were getting cold on the plate behind me, but I couldn't move. Because that note, it wasn't just a list. It was a confession. My name's Grover. Yeah, like the Muppet. Go ahead and laugh. I'm used to it. Laughed at in school, overlooked at work, tolerated in marriage. But that day, that note, that was the first time I really saw it all for what it was. I wasn't a husband. I was a human task manager. Shannon, my wife, had stopped speaking to me like I was a person months ago. Everything we said to each other came through written reminders, shared calendars, automated notifications. Our marriage had become a series of bullet points and silent expectations. I could have died in the living room, and she'd probably schedule my funeral in Google Docs. And somehow, I let it get this far. I used to fight it. I used to try, God, I tried. Planned trips, cooked meals, wrote little notes of my own, and left them in her coat pockets. Things like, miss you, and still in love with you. You know what I got back? More lists. And one time, a message that said, thanks. Please don't do this at work again. It's unprofessional. It was my lunch, by the way. I'd sent a flower and a card to her office. Embarrassing, I guess. What kind of grown man sends love notes to his wife? The kind who still believed she wanted more than just a handyman with a pulse. I was wrong. So that sticky note, it broke me in a way her silence never could. Because it made me realize something horrifying. She didn't even think this was cruel. This was normal, acceptable, functional. Like I was a robot she'd programmed and expected to just keep going until the warranty ran out. That night, I didn't scream, didn't argue, didn't even text back when she asked if I remembered the dry cleaning. I just did the list. I took out the trash, paid the bill, fixed the stupid shower, picked up her things. And then, I did something new, something that wasn't on her note. I left her a list of my own. A quiet list. No ink, no paper, just actions. Actions that would unfold over the next few weeks, like dominoes tipping one after another. Actions that she wouldn't even notice until it was far too late. Because if she wanted a husband who only did what was asked, then that's exactly what she was going to get. Starting now. That night, I sat across from her at the dinner table, watching her chew her grilled salmon like she was alone. No eye contact. No conversation. Her phone buzzed twice. She smiled at it, typed something quickly, then set its screen down like she had something worth hiding. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask. I just nodded when she said, the asparagus is overdone again. That was all I got. That, and a request for me to not wear my wrinkled office shirts when we had guests next weekend. There were no guests coming. That was just her way of reminding me that I embarrassed her now. I didn't react. I just nodded again, the way I would if a stranger asked me to hold a door open. Because that's what I was now. A stranger she issued instructions to. And tonight, I was finally ready to act like one. She didn't notice the missing photo on the living room shelf. The one of our honeymoon in St. Thomas, gone. I replaced it with a blank white frame, and I watched her walk past it twice, eyes on her phone, not even pausing. She didn't notice I stopped using our shared calendar. I deleted my events. My dentist appointment, my cousin's birthday dinner, my weekly therapy session, which she said was a waste of money since I don't change anyway, all vanished. Not a word from her. No concern. No questions. I was starting to wonder if I could walk out the front door for a week and she'd just assume I was stuck in traffic. The only thing she did notice was the dishwasher. You loaded it wrong again, she muttered that Friday morning. She didn't say good morning, just critiqued my spacing between plates. I apologized like I always did, but this time, my apology was different. Because this time, I knew it wasn't real. I wasn't sorry. I was playing a role, the obedient shell she wanted. Saturday, I installed a door lock on my office. Quietly. No announcement. Just a silver lock she'd see next time she needed me to reset her Wi-Fi. I started sleeping with my back to her, just like she did to me. I stopped trying to touch her in the dark, stopped asking her if she was cold, stopped pulling the blanket up over her when she kicked it off. I let her be as alone as she'd made me feel for months. No, years. The thing is, she liked control. She didn't love me. She managed me. And now that I was following instructions like a good little robot, she was finally getting what she thought she wanted. Quiet compliance. Smooth efficiency. Total distance. Until one morning, something happened that cracked her routine. She came down for breakfast and found her coffee already made. Just the way she liked it. Almond milk, 2 sugar substitutes, hint of cinnamon. Her usual. But this time, there was a napkin underneath the mug, and on that napkin, I'd written just 2 words in my careful, steady handwriting. Request completed. She stared at it for a long time. Longer than I expected. Then she looked at me. Not with confusion. Not with gratitude. With something closer to suspicion. Like she suddenly realized she didn't know the man across from her anymore. Like she might have pushed too far, and something inside me had gone cold. She was right. And soon, she'd learn just how cold I could get. For the first time in what felt like years, she actually looked at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. And I could see it happening in real time. The way her eyes scanned my face, the subtle squint of calculation behind them, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't remember building. That napkin note. It unsettled her. Not because it was cruel. It wasn't. It was clinical. Mechanical. The exact mirror of how she'd been treating me. I was simply matching her energy, and she didn't like it. By Monday, she was hovering. Not affectionate. Not even kind. Just watching. She lingered in doorways when I was working. She'd ask unnecessary questions like, "Did you already take out the trash?" Or, "Did you remember to water the ficus?" Questions she already knew the answers to. She was checking my reactions, my tone, my responses. But I gave her nothing. Just polite, efficient confirmation. Yes. Handled. Already done. Every sentence was a completed task. Every gesture, a neutral signal. That week, I did something new. I started recording my own version of the marriage. Not for revenge. Not even for evidence. Just for myself. Every time she handed me a list, every time she walked away while I was mid-sentence, every time she spoke to me like a tenant in her house rather than a husband in our home, I wrote it down. I kept a digital journal. Time-stamped. Documented. Day by day. A file of slow erosion. Because I wasn't just surviving her anymore. I was preparing. Not for a blow-up. No. I knew she didn't have that in her. Deborah doesn't scream. Deborah doesn't cry. Deborah corrects. And I had become the one thing she couldn't control anymore. Quiet, careful, and watching everything. On Thursday night, something shifted. She came into the kitchen wearing that burgundy robe I used to love. The one she hadn't touched in months. Her makeup was subtle, but it was there. Lip gloss. Light mascara. She opened the fridge, leaned over just enough to be noticeable, then turned and said, "I thought maybe we could have wine tonight. Like we used to. Just talk. Just talk." She hadn't said those words since the 2nd year of our marriage. The first time, it meant holding hands under a blanket and telling each other secrets. This time, it sounded like bait. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just poured the wine and handed her a glass. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for me to lead the way. But I didn't. I sat down, sipped quietly, and waited to see what game she was playing. She talked about her week. How work had been draining. How the traffic downtown was getting worse. She mentioned her sister's dog having surgery. All these things she never bothered sharing with me before, suddenly they mattered. She was trying. That was the terrifying part. She was trying, but not because she missed me. Because she noticed the system had glitched. The machine wasn't behaving predictably anymore. At the end of her glass, she finally asked it. The real question. "Are you okay, Grover? You've seemed different lately." I looked her dead in the eye, and for the first time in years, I told the absolute truth. But I didn't give her what she expected. "I'm finally doing what you asked," I said softly. "No more feelings. No more noise. Just doing what a husband is supposed to do. Isn't that what you always wanted?" She blinked. Twice. Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't know how to argue with it, because it was exactly what she'd trained me to be. But deep down, I think she finally realized something. She had broken me, rebuilt me, and now, she was living with the version she created. But not for long. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that someone else had been reading my journal. And they weren't a stranger. They were closer to her than she could ever imagine. It was never supposed to leave my phone. The journal, I mean. The daily log of emotional cuts. Each one shallow enough to dismiss, but deep enough to scar. I never intended for anyone to read it. It was for me, a place to stay sane while I faded quietly in the background of my own life. But then one night, I did something out of character. I snapped. It was just a stupid moment. I was sitting in the car, parked in front of the grocery store because she sent me back for the third time that day, this time for the right kind of quinoa, the kind with the blue label. I had just written another entry, something like, "She called me lazy today because I folded the towels wrong." I stared at the screen, trembling with a mix of anger and exhaustion. And then, without thinking, I forwarded the journal to someone I hadn't spoken to in months. My sister, Clarice. Now, Clarice has always been blunt. She hated Deborah from the start. Said she smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. Said she didn't laugh unless someone else was the joke. I brushed it off, told her she was being dramatic. "Deborah's just under pressure," I used to say. "She's strong." Clarice called me exactly 7 minutes after I sent the file. "Grover," she said, "this is abuse." That word. I flinched when I heard it. It felt too big, too sharp, too real. I told her not to blow it out of proportion, that I was fine, that I just needed to vent somewhere. But she wouldn't let it go. She read every single entry, from the sticky notes to the silence, from the dead stares to the manufactured wine night. She connected the dots I had refused to, and she said the one thing that cracked me wide open. "You're not her husband, Grover. You're her unpaid employee, her emotional garbage disposal, and she's not even discreet about it." "What do you mean not discreet?" I asked. Clarice was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "Check her Venmo." My heart dropped. I hadn't thought about it in years. We used to share finances, loosely, but Deborah always insisted on keeping her autonomy, so she had her own digital wallets. I never felt the need to snoop. Until now. When I opened it, the first thing I saw was a transaction labeled "Coffee Date Red Heart," sent to a name I didn't recognize. A man. Multiple payments. Some recent. Some going back months. I clicked on his profile. Mutual friends. One of them? Her coworker. The one she said was super annoying and always talked about CrossFit. Only now, she was sending him coffee money. And little hearts. The weight of it didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves, slow, sickening waves that made the air feel heavier. So she wasn't just cold. She wasn't just distant. She was giving parts of herself to someone else, while I was giving her everything just to earn a scrap of attention. And suddenly, all the dinners at 7, all the emotional indifference, all the tightly managed schedules, they weren't about routine. They were about covering tracks. Now I had a name. And soon, I'd have answers. His name was Chase. Of course it was. Chase McCallan. The kind of name that sounds like he wears tight dress shirts on purpose and calls women trouble as a flirt. I didn't want to be petty, but as I scrolled through his profile, something inside me coiled tight. He wasn't better looking than me, just louder, flashier, smug. The kind of man who talks over waiters and gets free drinks by complimenting bartenders. He posted gym selfies with captions like "grind mode" and used hashtags unironically. And now, he was the guy my wife was sending little hearts to behind my back. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was a work thing. A joke. But I kept scrolling, and then I found it. A photo from 3 months ago. Chase at a rooftop bar, drink in hand, sunglasses on at night, captioned, "Nothing like a Thursday with a beautiful view," smirking face. In the reflection of his glass, if you zoomed in just enough, and I did, you could make out part of a burgundy robe. Her robe. It hit me like a punch to the chest. The same robe she wore the night she invited me to just talk. The same night she acted like maybe she missed me. And now I realized it had nothing to do with me. She was feeling guilty. Or maybe trying to cover her tracks. Either way, that robe hadn't been for me. It had been for him. And I had no idea how far it went. But I was going to find out. So I started building a timeline. Not out of revenge. Not yet. This was about clarity. About taking control of something. Anything. After years of living like a ghost in my own home. I cross-referenced the payments, the nights she worked late, the time she was suddenly too tired to talk. I even checked the scent of her clothes on laundry days. Sometimes, they smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. Once, I asked if she'd switched fabric softeners. She said, "No." Why? And went back to scrolling her phone. I created a file on my computer labeled Project Maintenance. It looked like a home budget spreadsheet, in case she ever opened it. But each tab had dates, receipts, and screenshots. Patterns, lies, payments, pictures. I became meticulous, cold, almost surgical. Every new piece of evidence made it easier to shut off whatever part of me still loved her. But here's where it got strange. The more distant I became, the more curious she got. One morning she lingered in the hallway as I got dressed, watching me button my shirt like it was suddenly fascinating. She made 2 cups of coffee and actually brought me one, first time in years. She even brushed her hand against mine when she handed it over and said, "You've been really focused lately. It's kind of nice." I said nothing. She kissed me on the cheek. I didn't kiss back. Something in her flickered. Maybe panic. Maybe regret. Maybe fear that I was finally becoming someone she couldn't read. She was right. Because the man standing in front of her, the man she once thought would always be predictable, soft, and safe, was gone. And the one she'd built in his place? He was just getting started. It started with breakfast. I woke up one morning to the smell of scrambled eggs and toast. For a second, I thought I was dreaming, or maybe had gone back in time. But there it was, coffee brewing, the table set, music playing softly in the background. She was standing by the stove in an old college sweatshirt, barefoot, smiling, like we were in love or something. "Thought I'd surprise you," she said. "You've been working hard." Working hard? She hadn't said a kind thing to me in months. Now suddenly I'm getting breakfast like it's our anniversary? No, something was off. This wasn't affection. This was performance. She wasn't being loving. She was trying to reset the stage, trying to rewrite the script I'd stopped following. I sat down, ate in silence, and thanked her with a neutral nod. She looked disappointed, like she was expecting a breakthrough moment. But I gave her nothing. I was done playing the grateful husband. I was playing a longer game now. That same afternoon, I got a message I didn't expect. It was from an anonymous account. No photo, just a name I didn't recognize. WifeWatcher_89. The message was short. "Chase isn't who you think he is. Ask your wife about the ski trip last December. And check her photo vault. You're not the only one she lied to." I sat there frozen, rereading it 5 times. Ski trip? She told me she went on a corporate retreat that December. I remembered clearly because I stayed home with the flu, and she didn't even FaceTime me once. Said there was no signal in the cabins. At the time, I believed her. Now I was ready to burn that memory to the ground. I knew her password. She didn't bother changing it. Still the same birthday of her high school crush, which should have been a red flag from day one. I opened her cloud vault, scrolled past all the shared albums. Then I found one labeled miscellaneous edits. It was buried deep, like she didn't expect anyone to bother looking. And there it was. Photos. Dozens of them. Her in a rented lodge, glass of wine in hand. Her on a snowmobile, laughing with someone behind the camera. And then, her in a hot tub, leaning against Chase's bare chest. His arms around her. Her lips on his neck. Not a single trace of regret on her face. Just comfort. Familiarity. Like they'd done it before. Like I never existed. I stared at those photos until my fingers went numb. All the timelines clicked into place. The late nights. The weird moods. The sudden reconnection this week. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't love. It was fear. Something had changed on her end. She knew something was slipping. And she was right. Because now, I wasn't just suspicious. I wasn't just tired. I was certain. And with certainty came clarity. She didn't know what I had. She didn't know who'd messaged me. And she had no idea who else had been watching her lies unfold in real time. But she was about to find out. The next morning, I didn't speak to her. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. But the silence between us was no longer passive. It was tactical. She moved around me like someone walking through a minefield barefoot, pretending everything was fine while knowing one wrong step would set everything off. And that was the key. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to feel the ground shaking beneath her. I waited until the weekend. Saturday morning. She was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee like she hadn't shattered the foundation of our marriage. I slid a plain white envelope across the counter. She looked at it like it might bite her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice too steady. "Open it." She didn't want to. I could see it in her hands, the way she hesitated, the fake casual flick of her nail lifting the flap. Inside were 3 printed photos. Not all of them. Just 3. Her and Chase in the hot tub. Her in the robe I once thought was mine. Her hand on his chest, her wedding ring clearly visible. She went pale. Not flushed, not shocked, just pale. Like her body was conserving blood, trying not to collapse. She didn't speak for nearly a minute. Then she said the most insulting thing she possibly could have. "This isn't what it looks like." I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so wildly pathetic. That was her defense? After months of treating me like a ghost, after turning me into her background labor, after letting another man put his arms around her while I fixed her plumbing and folded her laundry? She saw the laugh as a threat. Her walls shot up instantly. "Who gave you these? Did you follow me? Were you spying on me?" I looked her in the eyes and said, "No, Deborah. Someone else was." And that landed. Her face twitched. Her mask slipped. She realized for the first time that the world outside our marriage was watching. And I wasn't the fool anymore. I was the one with the spotlight. "I've been loyal to you," I said, voice low but sharp. "Even when you treated me like a tool. Even when you stopped looking at me. I still showed up. Every single day. Not because I was weak, but because I believed that maybe, just maybe, you were still in there. That maybe the woman I married wasn't gone, just buried." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "You wanted a man who didn't complain, who did his job, who asked for nothing. So I became that. And you hated it. Because it turns out, when there's no one left to control, you lose." She slammed her mug down. "So what now? You want a divorce? You want to ruin me? Is that it?" I stared at her for a long, long time. And then I said, with complete calm, "I want you to sit with what you've done. I want you to feel what I felt when you were smiling at another man while I begged you to look at me. I want you to understand that this silence between us, it's permanent. Because I don't want to punish you. That would mean I still care." Her eyes welled up. She tried to turn it around. The guilt act. The fragile voice. "Grover, we can fix this." "No," I whispered. "You can't fix what you never thought you were breaking." And with that, I stood up, grabbed the small travel bag I'd packed the night before, and walked out the front door. She didn't follow. Not yet. But the story wasn't over. Because the person who'd sent me that message, they weren't done either. I didn't go far that night. Just far enough to hear silence that wasn't suffocating. I checked into a modest guest house outside town. No TV, no noise. Just an old desk, a creaky bed, and a window that faced the sunrise. I slept without clenching my jaw for the first time in years. The next morning, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see if she'd called. I didn't care if she had. If it was real, if there was remorse, if there was panic, none of it mattered anymore. I wasn't interested in her pain. I was done being someone else's mirror. The world felt different when you're not pretending anymore. Over the next few weeks, I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I went for long walks without checking my watch. I read old sci-fi novels that used to keep me up until sunrise back in college. I signed up for a pottery class. Yes, pottery. Don't laugh. There was something soothing about shaping something messy into something whole. Something imperfect, but mine. I got a message from Clarice 2 weeks later. "Proud of you," it said. "Also, Mom wants to know if you're still alive." I laughed. A real laugh. I hadn't done that in a long time. I replied, "Tell her I'm alive." And for once, I think I actually mean it. Eventually, I spoke to a lawyer. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. There would be no revenge. No public scandal. Just a clean break. I gave Deborah the house. I didn't want it. That place was built on silence. Let her live with the echoes. She tried calling me one night, 2 months after I left. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. That would have meant she still had power. But I didn't need to speak. The silence was mine now, not hers. Last I heard, Chase had moved on. That was inevitable. He was always a collector, not a partner. She learned that the hard way. Maybe it broke her. Maybe it didn't. I'll never know. And that's okay. Because this story doesn't end with her. It ends with me. Not the version of me she tried to mold, flatten, and quiet. But the one I buried under years of trying to be enough. Now I wake up in a place that smells like coffee and sawdust and fresh clay. I have friends. I have music. I have weekends that don't feel like punishment. I don't flinch when I speak. I don't shrink when I love. And I don't apologize for wanting to be seen. I was never the problem. I was the lesson. And if she ever figures that out, she'll be too late.